Project Bluebeam, where through technology and the help of NASA, directed by the UN, that's right, Project Bluebeam is a project that is headed up by NASA and is directed through the UN. So the UN told NASA to work on this project. And basically what it is, it's about the ultimate one world government, and it can be constructed while the world is distracted by things like wars, pandemics, and weather events. That is truly, in a nutshell, what Project Bluebeam is about. Now, it involves holograms and aliens and stuff, but ultimately, this is the trigger point for creating that Antichrist beast system. So what is Project Bluebeam? Again, most people think aliens and holograms, but ultimately, it's much bigger. Bluebeam is about the disintegration of national borders, the removal of all religions, and the formation of a global government using technology. Does any of that sound familiar? Are we seeing any of that in today's world? I think we are. How are they doing this? They're doing things like man-made false flags, weather manipulations, and earthquakes. So I told you guys HARP would be a part of that as well. They are. It also involves replacing all currency with digital currency. Yes, this is part of Project Bluebeam as well. Placing false information within the mainstream, placing false information within the news stream without using the mainstream media and using other news heads out there. Things like Twitter and Facebook and social media programs getting the news out there, which is fascinating because something that Elon Musk has been talking about heavily with his Twitter purchase is how he wants to demolish mainstream media and make sure that his platform, the people, are the news stream, which actually falls directly in line with exactly what Bluebeam is about. It's about bypassing the mainstream news channels and letting it fall upon the other ones. And yes, it also involves holograms, virtual and augmented reality, as well as AI programs as well. So Bluebeam is more than just holograms and aliens or a way to explain away the rapture. It's actually about technology and psychological programs designed to construct the beast system built on the foundation of the New Age religion. I kid you not. Remember, if you guys haven't seen my End Times New Age series, the UN was formed with the foundation of New Age religion. And so when the UN is directing something like Project Bluebeam, everything that they're going to build upon it has to do with that New Age religion. So it should come as no surprise that Project Bluebeam and everything surrounding it also has to do with that New Age religion as well. One of the most prominent names in exposing this project, one of the prominent names exposing Project Bluebeam is Canadian investigative journalist Serge Monast. Here is Serge, and you can see his book there called Le Project Bluebeam de la NASA. And so he was from Canada, and so he speaks the French. And so, this is Serge Monast, and he was the one that was notorious for spreading what was going on with Project Bluebeam. He published that book that you see there on the left. That was in 1994. That he put that out. And so Serge, he describes that Project Bluebeam is headed by NASA under the direction of the UN with a 4-step plan to bring in the New World Order. Yes, a 4-step plan to bring in New World Order. What is the 4 steps that Monast claims Bluebeam is about? Bluebeam 4-step plan. 1, abolish religion. 2, holograms, augmented reality, and UFOs. 3, electronic telepathy or mind control. And 4, electronic manifestations, or what everybody automatically thinks with Bluebeam, false flag alien invasion. This is the 4-step plan of Bluebeam that Monast exposed when it comes to what's going on. Now, we'll go over all 4 of those a little bit more in depth a little bit later. So we'll come back to that. Just want to give you guys a heads up before we start diving into it. And ultimately, what is kind of backing this up and making it so the world, making it so society is ready for these things has to do with the destruction of religion, of course, the destruction of family units, the destruction of national identities, and the destruction of creativity. These are all things that we have seen. Now, a lot of people will look at that and go, oh, that's the communist stuff. Well, would you believe me if I said that the communist idea is actually connected to Bluebeam as well? Yeah, I'm sure you would believe me on that, because it is amazing, right? So what are these 4 goals, and how are they a part of all this? Well, Monast also discovered a meeting that happened back in the 60s and again in the 80s, and he put it out in a paper in 1995, so a year after his Bluebeam book, and it was called the Toronto Protocols. So we're going to take a look. Now, we got a lot to cover on this. We're not going to cover every bit, but I did point out the stuff that I think is extremely important with this. So you're going to have to hang with me as we go through this. The Toronto Protocols. Oh boy, here we go. Strap in, guys. So it goes from the International Free Press Agency intelligence report by Serge Monast in 1995. Here we go, a little summary of what this is about. At the end of June 1967 in Montreal, there is Expo 67. In Ottawa, there are final preparations for the Centenary of the Confederation in the U.S. It is the challenge of the Vietnam War, and through this the country, the Flower Power movement. These are going kind of little history movements as we progress from this. We are close to the events of May 1968 in France, the explosion of nationalism in Quebec, the Woodstock Festival in the U.S., but at the same time, at the end of 1967 marks the final preparation for the development of the plan of the fall of nations by the highest level of the Anglo-Saxon Freemasonry in Toronto. Now, here we go. This secret meeting, highly confidential, is organized by the 666. So they call themselves. Interesting. It's starting to get interesting now, isn't it? And who are the 666? Those who run the 6 largest banks in the world, the 6 largest energy consortia of the planet, including oil, and the 6 largest consortia of agri-food, which includes the control of main food roads of the world. These 666, being the most senior international financiers, will define within their meeting a common strategy for absolute control over world trade on the possession of the energy weapon, the open gateway of the 21st century, and the international control of food, which also includes for them the pharmaceutical companies, which include in turn global market for vitamins and that V word that YouTube hates. Their plan boils down to 3 major themes: the economic, the political, and the social policy for the 70s and 80s. If successful, it must inevitably lead to the capture of the global power by implementing the New World Order, the same which U.S. President George Bush will do much to promote in the early 90s. The title of the document of the 666, Panem and Circuses, from Bread and Circuses Games, old Roman phrase to describe how the emperors used to entertain and feed the masses so they would be distracted from taking interest in politics. Interesting. Now, I'm sure some people have heard variations of different entities like this, but ultimately, when you look at these 666, 6 of the bank, 6 of the food, and 6 of the energy, you're probably looking at the round table that's sitting above everybody right now, making moves. That's who I look at when I see this. Now, as we go through a little bit more of these things, you're going to start to notice a lot of this stuff is things that we are seeing today. Keep in mind that these were meetings that happened in 67, 65, 67. Says it right there, and I can't even remember it. 67, as well as in the 80s. And we're going to get to both of those papers as well. But both of these were then. He released this in 1995, Serge did. And now take a look at what we see going on today. It's crazy. Let's take a look. The document, Bread and Circus, 1967. All historic periods having lead to the decline of civilization were quite marked without exception by the spirit of the wandering people. Today, we have to make so that this spirit is translated by a world society of leisure. Bread and Circus. Today, we have, where it says world leisure, under all of its forms. This leisure has to consist of the sex, of the drugs, of the sport, of the travel and exoticism, as well as the leisure activities in general, but accessible to all sectors of society. The man has to manage to believe that it is modern and all his modernity consists of the capacity and his possibility of being able to enjoy much that surrounds him. To achieve this objective, it is imperative to be able to infiltrate the medias, radio, television, newspapers, and now we got social media and all things digital, of course, settings of fashion and culture, circles in new music, which will influence for sure the layers of Western societies, thus taking under control the senses of the youth, tomorrow's adults. We have consequently the way clear for infiltrating the transform in depth without being disturbed the politics and legal system and the education, and thus allowing to radically change the course and future direction of societies covered by our plan. So their goal is to make people get hooked onto leisure, sex, drugs, rock and roll, and twist the minds of the youth. So as generations move forward, they will continuously move towards this society that they're trying to build, which will consist more on things like convenience and technology, and be wandering free spirits where they're not connected to things like Christianity and Jesus. That's ultimately what they're doing. Now, again, some people might be looking at this going, what does this have to do with Project Bluebeam? Everything. We'll get to it. Let's keep going. It says to end with certainty in the construction of the world government, or a new community world government. There's your communism, where all the individuals without exception will be subjected to the world state of the new order. We have to, first of all, remove the family. Oh, really? What have we been seeing so much of lately? What will entail at the same time the disappearance of ancestral religious teachings. Now, again, remember, one of the main points of Project Bluebeam is to abolish religion and form a one world religion based upon New Age doctrine. Here it is. They want to remove that. There's also another aspect to removal as well that we'll get to when we keep going. Yeah, they want to basically remove the family and as well as ancestral religious teachings. At the same time, there will be second place level of individuals by removing social classes, in particular middle classes. So basically, you're either going to be poor or rich. They want to get rid of the middle class, as well as the appearance or the disappearance of democracy, which I have always said doesn't actually exist. It is a made-up word, and they're confirming it here through the Toronto protocols, and using isolated cases by amplifying them to the extreme with the help of student protests. Again, what have we been seeing, guys? But amplifying them to the extreme with the help of student protests infiltrated by us, journalists favorable to our cause and politicians purchased. Again, what have we been seeing, guys? We will be able to put in place new organizations having all the appearances of modernity, as well as Office of Child Protection, protected by the Charter of Rights and Freedom. This charter, painstakingly developed in our lodges. Remember, this is Freemasonry that is leading this. We will finally eliminate any parental authority in the family by shattering people fiercely opposed to one another for the protection of their personal interests. It will encourage children to denounce parents, very authoritarian, because too traditional and too religious. Again, that was their goal, to remove those. It will contribute thus to subjecting parents to a collective psychosis of fear, which inevitably will cause, in a general way in society, a relaxation of parental authority. They did it in Russia, as it goes on to say, thereby transferring to the state the parental role. And this is how we can be considered by all as an abuse against children, the traditional religious education of the Judeo-Christian origin. Basically, Christianity will be deemed offensive and abusive to children. Sound familiar? It should. We're watching that explode right in front of our eyes. And yes, all of this is part of Project Bluebeam. Amazing, isn't it? Let's keep going. For guaranteed success of such an enterprise, it is essential that civil servants working in these offices and the service of the state are young. Oh boy. Without past experience, imbued with theories which we know empty and ineffective. They've been teaching kids in college empty and ineffective ideals, and then immediately putting them into important spots in government and all aspects of life, because this is exactly what they were aiming for. Remember, These were meetings in the 60s and 80s, released in 1995, and look at what we see going on today. Just keep that in mind. It's amazing. It goes on to say, and especially should be obsessed with the missionary spirit of the great protector of children at risk, because for them, all parents must represent as potential criminals, potential hazards to welfare of the child, here considered to be God. So they are now considering children to be God. And just as we covered in the End Times New Age series, the SEL, or Social Emotional Learning Curriculum, they are teaching kids that you are God. Yep. It's all connected, guys. In this way, by removing from the younger generation any basis and any moral boundary, all knowledge of the past, and therefore any national pride, here we go, destruction of borders, so all respect for others, all the power and knowledge of the language of science, and thus reality, we will help build a youth largely disposed to all forms of crime. In this new universe fragmented by the fear of parents and their abandonment of all responsibility regarding their kids, against parents now today are not parents at all, we will have a clear path to form in our own way and according to our own primary objectives, a youth where arrogance, contempt, humiliation of others will be considered as the new basis of affirmation of self and freedom. It's almost like the description, the adjectives that they were giving in this paper, that Serge is giving in this paper, is straight from the Bible of what Paul tells us it's going to look like in Timothy. He gives us, what is it, 17 or 19, I can't remember exactly, descriptive words of what the end times are going to be like. And we're reading every single one, boom, 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 right here in this paper. To complete the breakdown of the family, the education system, thus the society in general, it is essential to encourage, here we go, guys, the sexual freedom at all levels of the Western society. It is necessary to reduce the individual, therefore the masses, to the obsession of satisfying their primal instincts by all possible means. We know that this step represents the culmination of which any society will eventually collapse on itself, had it not been so in the Roman Empire at its height, and similar to all civilizations throughout history. It's like we're reading something straight out of 2024. By men of science in the laboratories funded by our Freemason lodges, we have managed to develop a chemical process that will revolutionize all Western societies and regulate to oblivion forever moral principles and religious Christianity. This process in pill form will open the way to the sexual freedom without consequences and push the women of nations to want to break with that, with what will be perceived as the yoke of the past, or the slavery of women subjected to men and the traditional Judeo-Christian family. They are, this is talking about the feminist movement. It's fascinating because when we read in Isaiah, I believe it's Isaiah 3, it gives us descriptions of what God's judgment is upon nations. And we just read both of them in this document if you didn't catch it. Children will basically be abusers of their parents, and women will have leadership authority. Making children gods and the feminist movement. Something to think about. Goes on to say, formerly center and pivot of the family unit, the modern woman, now as an independent individual, wants to break with its traditional role, break away from the family, and lead their life according to their own personal aspirations. Nothing more natural, we know, but where we will intervene strongly, it will be to infiltrate all the new feminine protest movements by pushing their logic to the extreme limits of consequence. And these families can be found already registered in the definitive breakdown of the traditional family in Christian society. This open door for the encouragement of sexual freedom to the divorce, to abortion, on demand, to the legal recognition of diverse forms of homosexuality. Again, it's like we're reading something straight out of 2024. Will help us to radically change the historical basis of the legal right of the societies. It will be a major asset to push for all of the individuals and a general relaxation of the morals, to divide the individuals as compared against each other according to their instincts and their own interests, to destroy the future of the youth by pushing the adverse experiences of early sexuality and the abortions, and to break morally the future generations by pushing them to alcoholism. different drugs, which our senior international lodge officers will take charge of by taking control of the world level. Yeah. And in suicide, that it will be considered by a youth disillusioned and abandoned to themselves as being chivalrous end. I mean, this is just straight evil. And this is satanic. It's like Satan was sitting in these meetings and said, write down what I'm about to tell you, because this is how I'm going to build my Antichrist beast system. And the thing is the members of the 666 that did write this, you better believe they got direct line to Satan himself to set this up. Now, I got a couple more. I know it's a lot of reading, but we have to get through. This is extremely important if we want to understand everything else about Bluebeam as we continue to go through. So hang with me. Okay. Let's see. It says, in the same sense, and to guarantee the profitability of our influence with the populations, we shall have to control all the news media. Our banks will thus see to finance only those who are favorable to us, whereas they will oversee the closure of the more I'm not even going to be able to try and pronounce that, guys. Sorry. It should go almost unnoticed. Basically, those going against the narrative. It should go almost unnoticed in principle in the populations, whom they will be absorbed by their need to make more money and entertain themselves. End of document 666, dated end June 1967. So that was the first one. Just a couple more, just two more pages. Hang with me. And it goes on to say, 18 years later, or 666, in the time was held another La Réunion of importance for Canada, or Canada. The group 666 meets once again in Toronto at the end of June 1985, but this time to finalize the last stages that should result, and on to the collapse of the nation states, and on the taking of international power by, there it is, the United Nations. Shocking, right? Document Red Dawn, 1985, Globalist Project Goal, establishment of the occult world. Means of financing project, control of IMF, GATT, Brussels Committee, NATO, UN, and other international organizations. Oh my goodness. Due to our infiltration agents and our colossal financial resources, unprecedented process has now been made in all areas of science and technology, of which we control the largest corporations financially. Since secret meeting with M. de Rothschild, within the 56 years, we were aimed at finalizing the development and implementation, here it goes with the technology, guys, of the world computers. It is now possible to foresee the establishment of a kind of international highway where all these machines are interconnected, the Internet of Things. Because, as you already know, the direct control of the individual populations of the planet, at the very least, would be totally impossible without the use of computers, electronic, and attaching them to each other in a vast global network. Wow. These machines... Here it is, guys. These machines also have the advantage of replacing millions of people. In addition, they have neither conscience nor any moral, which is essential for the success of a project like ours. Above all, these machines do, without question, everything is dictated to them. They are perfect slaves, which our predecessors have dreamed, but not that they are able to doubt that that one day it would be possible to perform such a miracle. This is in 85, guys. These machines, without country, without color, without religion, without political affiliation, are the ultimate fulfillment of our tool and the new world order. They are the cornerstone. And last but not least, to finish this off, the last stages relate in the Omega phase, experimented from the experiments made at the beginning of the 70s. They contain the application at the world level, electromagnetic weapons, the changes of climate, entailing the destruction of the harvests, the bankruptcy in these conditions, farmlands, the denaturation by artificial means of the foodstuffs of regular consumption, the poisoning of the nature by the exaggerated and mindless exploitation and the massive use of chemicals in the agriculture. All this, brothers, will lead to the ruin assured by the food industries of nation states. The future of the control of the populations of these states passes necessarily by the absolute control by us of the food production of the world level and by the takeover of the main food roads of the planet. To do it, it is necessary to use electromagnetics, among others, to destabilize the climates of the most productive states in the agricultural plan. As for the poisoning of the nature, it will be accelerated all the more as the increase of the populations will push it without restriction there. The use of electromagnetic cause earthquakes in the most important industrial areas of the nation states will contribute to the acceleration or contribute to accelerate the economic fall of the most threatening states for us, as well as amplify the obligation of the implementation of our new world order. I know, a lot of reading, but all of that I wanted you to hear. I wanted you to see. I wanted you to read. I wanted you to understand. Because, again, I know some people are thinking, what on earth does this have to do with holograms and aliens? Again, Project Bluebeam is much more than just a holographic alien invasion. This is setting up. This isn't even necessarily just about setting up. This is about creating the trigger to turn on the Antichrist beast system. That is what ultimately Project Bluebeam is. And these meetings by the 666 in 67 and 85 are the central grounds for getting the world ready for the eventual holographic alien invasion. This is ultimately what's going on. And those are the Toronto protocols. Now, there's a lot more. Again, we read a lot, but there's a lot more. But this gives you an idea of what's going on. Now, what gives all this validity, and it should be as no surprise, a year after Monast released this document, 1995, a year after this, his kids were taken as wards of the state. He was arrested and held overnight for questioning on possession of prohibited information. And then the next day, at the age of 51, he died of a heart attack alone in his apartment. Monast had the last card, the Bluebeam card. He had it. And he told us. All right, let's look deeper at the 4 steps. Let's take a look at these 4 steps. Let's go deeper on this. Let's get a better understanding. Now that we have an idea, a firm, a grasp on the foundation of what they're trying to do. Let's take a look at this. Number 1, abolish religion. This one's extremely important. It really is. Again, everything that we see going on, and I repeat this all the time. I don't care. I'm going to sound like a broken record because it needs to be said. Satan's ultimate goal is to get people to stop worshiping God and to worship him. He wants to kill souls. That's his goal. So everything revolves around this. That's important to understand. So abolishing religion just shows what is going on, who's behind it. And ultimately to go along with abolishing religion, taking care of the family unit and the the ancestral religious stuff and all these things. Again, I'm not just talking about Christianity. I'm talking about all religions pretty much around the world. Along with that, they will be using strategic earthquakes. Yes, strategic earthquakes throughout history to discover, quote unquote, discover hidden new religious material that will allow over time to disintegrate the walls between the different religions and unite them together. Go throughout history, we've seen some of those. And using earthquakes, they'll be able to discover new religious things as well, to unite them. What about holograms, augmented reality, and UFOs? Well, holograms are to be used to condition societies to UFOs. Now, we've gone over the fact that they do have UFOs. Nazi Germany was building these things back from when the mediums were channeling the demons or the Vrilia, and they got the Vril discs. They were building them back then. Guaranteed they've perfected stuff today that we see going on, both manned and unmanned, but also there's holographic stuff that we see going on out there in the sky. But holograms are to be used to condition societies to UFOs as well as extraterrestrial presence, and eventually a display, this is important, Eventually, a display of all religious ascended masters visually. So according to your most dominant religious area in the world. So if you're like in China or in Japan and stuff, there'd be like the Buddhist Maitreya, the Buddha Maitreya. And you go over here in the United States, you would see Jesus Christ. And you go to the different ones, there would be different ones. A visual display of the ascended masters actually coming together and forming one entity, which will be the real Christ. Yes. This is part of Project Bluebeam. They want a visual display of all of these entities coming together to create one entity. And we know him as the Antichrist. And so using holograms, using UFOs, get people on board with aliens, extraterrestrials, as well as preparing society to accept a one world religion. And when we take a look at some of the news media out there, they are definitely doing just that. Let's take a look at this.
And welcome back to The Factor Uncensored. This past weekend was very interesting. U.S. fighter planes shot down 3 unidentified objects spotted in the U.S. skies. Now, President Biden has insisted those objects were there for either commercial or research purposes. But a lot of people are throwing a lot of concern and side-eye at that, as no company has come forward to back those claims up. Todd Duplantis, who is the host of Beyond the Road podcast, joins us now here on The Factor Uncensored.
One thing, though, that is concerning to me is, you remember in June of 2021, the U.S. government finally released a UFO report, and we had congressional hearings.
And we were like, oh, what is this?
Exactly. Okay. They talked about 144 sightings, incidents that they documented. They just re-released that report last month. Did you hear about it?
Yeah, I'm like, what is that about?
510 now. Oops, where were the other 3 times sightings? Yeah. Okay, so in the report, there's a quote from a U.S. official, and they use the word destigmatizing. Mm-hmm. What they're trying to do is they're trying to destigmatize us. For what? Not an alien invasion, but there's stuff out there that we don't know yet that they may or may not release to us. But I found it very interesting. They use that word destigmatize. Mm-hmm. They want people to report UFOs.
But do you think the American public or the world public is ready for something like that? Because it challenges everything they know. If there is life out of there, we're supposed to be the only intelligent life because God created us. Then it brings into question God.
Right. Well,
for some.
Of course.
And are you ready for that?
Am I ready for it? Absolutely.
No, I'm saying the public. Yeah.
Well, I think the public's better prepared than we give them the benefit of the doubt. I really think the public will accept this. There's going to be a lot of far religious groups that are going to have problems with this, but
a lot there. Talking about destigmatizing the planet or the aliens, making it so society is more accepting to them. Also, questioning God. Well, if there's other beings out there, even though God says that we're the only ones, then people start to question God and how there's going to be pushback from these religious groups about the aliens and stuff. They're prepping. That is full on exactly what Bluebeam wants this to go out there. They want people questioning their religious beliefs. They want people questioning God, questioning the Bible. They want society preparing for extraterrestrials and getting them more conditioned for them. And they're putting it out there. They're getting people ready for this display that they're going to put on. Okay. Number 3, electronic telepathy or mind control. This is a fascinating one, guys, because there's some stuff out there that, oh my goodness. This is nothing new either. Electronic telepathy has to do with using radio waves and frequencies on a global scale to manipulate the minds of people. Using various radio waves like ELF, VLF, and RF radio frequencies, even things like LED lights, they put these frequencies off as well. Yep, and guess what they've been installing all over the place, including your home. Using these different radio waves, they will use these frequencies to make people believe that their God is speaking to them from within. You know how in New Age, they're always talking about listen to that voice inside you. from your soul. It's talking to you. They want to hack that. They want to use frequencies to make people believe that it's their being, their God, their deity, whatever they believe in, is speaking to them from within themselves. Then using these waves, they use this, it's called diffuse artificial thought, which they will use to intertwine with human thought. So basically using these radio waves, they're going to send thoughts, beliefs, ideas, memories, dreams, all these things to people. And then it's called through diffuse artificial thought, and it's going to intertwine with the human brain. And so the human brain is not just going to, they're not going to think, oh, this is some outside thought telling me to do something. No, they're going to think that it's actually a thought coming from their own mind and get them to move in the direction that they want to do. And this is absolutely able to be done. These are things that have been worked on since the 60s, the 70s, even the 50s. They've been working on this technology since like the 50s, using frequency to alter and manipulate people's brains. And they've been working on it ever since then. It's interesting because they have determined that a brain is like a computer. That's why they're trying to design computers after human brains, because they believe that the human brain is a more complicated version of a computer, which means you can input processes, compute it, and then have output from it. And so that's what they're trying to do with frequency. Ideas, thoughts, and beliefs can be sent to the brain, and humans will basically move accordingly, believing that it's their own thoughts that are driving them. Again, this technology has been in work for a while, not to mention in a now removed web page. You can't find it anymore unless you go to the Wayback Machine. They have something about using ultrasound to control the thoughts of people. Straight from the website through the Wayback Machine, mind control using sound waves. We asked a scientist how it works. It says at the moment, non-invasive neuromodulation, changing brain activity without the use of surgery. So not BCIs, not things like brain-computer interfaces, Neuralink, Synchron, any of that stuff, using just frequencies. Sound looks poised to usher in a new era of healthcare. Of course, it's talking about, it's going to benefit people because of this stuff. But what happens if this technique for altering our brainwaves escape regulation and falls into the wrong hands? Imagine a dictatorial regime with access to the tricks and tools to change the way its citizens think and behave. Wow. That's electronic telepathy. That's exactly what it is. Well, to get straight to the science, the principle of non-invasive neuromodulation is to focus ultrasound waves into a region in the brain so that they all gather in a small spot. Then hopefully, given the right set of parameters, this can change the activity of neurons. How dystopian could it get? Well, I can see the day coming where a scientist will be able to control what a person sees in their mind's eye by sending the right waves to the right place in their brain. My guess is that most objections will be similar to those we hear today about subliminal messages and advertisements, only much more vehement. This technology is not without its risk of misuse. It could be a revolutionary healthcare technology for the sick, or a perfect controlling tool with which the ruthless control the weak. This time, though, the control would be literal. Yes, they have technology that can control a human brain using sound waves. It's there. And Bluebeam wants to use just that on a more global scale. Look at all the different towers that are constructed all over the world. Think about it. Think about it. Number 4, electronic manifestations or false flag alien invasion. Electronic manifestations is the final false flag card in the deck. A holographic alien invasion paired with mind control frequencies, levitation technologies, which we know that they have, the Vril discs use that, financial collapse, and strategically placed DEW weapons or direct energy weapons and nuclear bombs. That's right. Using the holograms and the different things of mind control frequencies, levitation technology, financial collapse, and strategically placed DEW and nuclear weapons. will not only unite the world, but people will be asking for a one world system out of fear. They want to get society to beg for this system. And by using these things, they can get it done. They can get it done. It's more than just a hologram of aliens out there, guys. It's much more. So, I use the word false flag card. What does the final false flag card mean? What does that mean? Why am I using that terminology? This involves a man by the name of Wernher von Braun. But before we get to him, a timeline of events that lead up to him. So we have to get a little history before we dive into this man, because this dude is important when it comes to this. Let's take a look at a few timeline of events of how we got up to this. 1947, we had the Roswell incident, which, would you guys believe it? We finally have clarification about that UFO that crash landed in New Mexico that caused the Roswell information. We finally have a clear picture of what happened. Check it out. Oh, it's a Boeing. That explains a lot. Them DEI pilots crashed that sucker into the thing. Yeah, that explains what's going on. Okay, so 1947, we have the Roswell incident, which is the one where the UFO supposedly crash landed into in the New Mexico desert. And what came of that? Well, you had President Truman, who jumped into the action, and in 1947 he created the Majestic 12, which is basically the MIB group that their goal is to study the paranormal, human reaction to aliens and the paranormal, as well as continue to research the Vril disk technology from Nazi Germany. And along with that, created Project Blue Book, not Blue Beam, Project Blue Book. Blue Book is the project built upon the United States Air Force, as well as Truman's secret MIB group, the Majestic 12. And it's basically, again, formed from the Nazi scientists from Operation Paperclip that came over after that. So we talked about Nazi Germany and their belief in the occult, as well as getting all this stuff regarding aliens and UFO technology and all this type of stuff. And then basically Truman, through the CIA, brought all these scientists, the occultic Nazi scientists, over and put them into different government agencies and so on and so forth. And from them created the Majestic 12, as well as Project Blue Book. Not Blue Beam, Project Blue Book. Then in 1969, Project Blue Book was terminated and was officially folded into the Project Blue Beam project. So Project Blue Beam project, yeah, whatever. But basically Blue Book then folded into Project Blue Beam. And then in 1975, Gene Roddenberry pens the script for Star Trek, The God Thing, which was a movie that he was designing based off of Project Blue Beam. Yes. Now keep in mind, we talked about this. Gene Roddenberry was connected to the group that was Puharich, who was channeling the Council of Nine, and he designed the Star Trek show based on those messages that were being sent. You can read the book, The Only Planet of Choice. We went over all that already. Well, he's also connected to Project Blue Beam, and he actually wrote a script 5 years after Project Blue Beam began, based upon it. Now, the movie was never created. They tried multiple times to get it done. Never happened. But you can see that everything was about that. Now, what was the plot of it? The plot was about an alien who comes down and claims to be God. Fascinating. There's also a mini Star Trek episode that's based upon that, but this was supposed to be an entire movie based upon Blue Beam and whatnot. So Through this timeline of events, we kind of got an idea what's going on. Roswell incident, which formed the Majestic 12 from Operation Paperclip, Nazi scientists. That started Project Blue Book. Then the Blue Book folded into Project Bluebeam. And then in 1975, there was a script for Star Trek that was based upon the Blue Beam project. So we kind of got an idea. So on to Wernher von Braun. It's important to understand that this guy was brought over during Operation Paperclip. So this is Wernher von Braun. He is a literal rocket scientist. He was born in 1912, died in 1977, and he was a rocket scientist, a German rocket scientist that helped develop missiles for the German army in 1932. Then he joined the Nazi Party in 1937, and then he became a junior officer in the SS in 1940. He was also known to be a part of the development of the anti-gravity drill disc development as well. So he was all wrapped up in the Nazi Party, the occultism, rockets, and the anti-gravity UFO stuff as well. He was part of the Nazi scientists brought over again during Operation Paperclip, and he was placed within NASA. Remember, NASA is the one leading Project Bluebeam. One of Braun's closest friends was a woman by the name of Dr. Carol Rosin, she's also another rocket scientist. Dr. Carol Rosin, who was there at Braun's deathbed, where he gave warnings of a major worldwide cabal plot. How did he describe it? Well, he described it through a deck of false flag cards. They would over time manipulate and control the global populace through fear. Let's hear directly from Carol Rosin about this.
Good morning. My name is Carol Rosin. In 1974, I was introduced to the late Dr. Wernher von Braun in the U.S., the father of rocketry. In my first meeting with him, during that first 3.5 hours, he said to me, "Carol, you will stop the weaponization of space." He said, "No, you have to understand. This is February, and we have to prevent the weaponization of space because there is a lie being told to everyone that the weaponization of space is now first being based upon the evil empire, the Russians. There are many enemies," he said, "against whom we're going to build this space-based weapon system, the first of whom was the Russians, which was existing at that time. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be third world countries. Now we call them rogue nations or nations of concern. Then there would be asteroids." And then he would repeat to me over and over, "And the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat." Well, at the time, I kind of laughed when he said asteroids, and when he said extraterrestrials, I knew I wasn't going to deal with that subject. And now we hear on the news just today, this week, that they've slid in another enemy. Only this time we're going to protect our satellites. In other words, we have to have some reason to spend these trillions, to waste these dollars on a space-based weapon system, and they're all lies. This is a system, he told me, that would never protect anyone. Even back then, he talked about suitcase bombs. He talked about chemical, viral, bacterial, biological warfare, that these space-based weapons would never protect us against. And then he told me that, in fact, if you travel around the world, which I did after he died in 1977, I met with people in over 100 countries who were friends. They didn't want to build space-based weapons. I became a space and missile defense consultant, and I worked with people around the world. I became an advisor to the People's Republic of China. They don't want to build a space-based weapon system, and he told me back then that they didn't. He said, "Go to Russia. They're considered to be the enemy." I got on a plane by myself. When I got to Russia, I had a list of people that I had read out of the newspaper. Chernenko was in office then. He was the only one I didn't get a chance to meet. They introduced me to everyone when I got there. And when I got back, I said, "Oh my, this man is telling the truth. There is no threat." And I've been waiting until this day for 27 years, and I'm expecting the spin to happen, because he also explained to me that as a military strategist, as a person who worked on the MX missile, which I did later, he said, "You will find that there is going to be a spin to find some enemy against whom we have to build space-based weapons. And now we should expect the spin, because he said part of the formula for the intelligence community is if they might have a weapon, then we have to consider that they do have these weapons. So now they do have these weapons, so now we have to build these weapon systems. And that's the formula, except that it's all based on a lie.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Nobody wants to do this, but they're being told that they have to do it. And he talks about the final card, repeated it over and over and over. The alien card. That is Project Bluebeam. The final card to be played to gain control and form this one world government is through an alien invasion, just as Monast Bluebeam exposure said it was, as well as what Brown there was discussing. Have we seen indications of this idea, though? We've got words and we've got reports and we've got all this stuff, but have we actually seen anything that's telling us that this is really what's going on? Well, I think we have.
I couldn't help at one point in my discussions privately with General Secretary Gorbachev, when you stop to think that we're all God's children, wherever we may live in the world, I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet, outside in the universe. We'd forget all the little local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings here on this earth together. Well, I don't suppose we can wait for some alien race to come down and threaten us, but I think that between us we can bring about that realization. In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war? I think maybe I'd answer it this way. I keep, in my frustration sometimes, you know, actually, if you count some of the things going on in smaller countries and all, there have been about 114 wars since World War II. But I've often wondered, what if all of us in the world discovered that we were threatened by a power from outer space, from another planet? Wouldn't we all of a sudden find that we didn't have any differences between us at all? We were all human beings, citizens of the world, and wouldn't we come together to fight that particular threat?
Did you hear that? He's talking about multiple times over years an outside alien force coming down that will unite the world together. That's Project Bluebeam. He said it 3 times. He said it 3 times. Let's hear from Bush Sr., shall we?
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law. Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge. Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is a very real prospect of a new world order.
New world order, designed after the UN founders. Again, the people directing Bluebeam, as well as that word that the phrase everybody loves to reference: peace and security. Peace and security. Okay, so we got a little bit of history on that. What about recently? Is there anything recently that points to the advancements of this false flag card, this Bluebeam card that's going on? Well, let's take a look. Northrop Grumman here, who's a aerospace as well as defense contractor. Coming from March 19th, 2024. Northrop Grumman Corporation has been selected by DARPA to further develop the concept of building a moon-based railroad network as part of the broader 10-year lunar architecture, or Luna 10 capability study. The envisioned Lunar Railroad network could transport humans, supplies, and resources to commercial ventures across the lunar surface, contributing to a space economy for the United States and international partners. The study will define the interfaces and resources required to build the rail network, establish a critical list of foreseeable costs, technological and logistical risks, identify prototypes, demonstrations, and analysis of fully operating lunar rail system concept design and architecture, as well as explore concepts for constructing and operating the system with robotics, including grading and foundation preparedness, track placement and alignment, joining the finishing, inspection, maintenance, and repair. And it goes on to talk about this as well on the DARPA website, Framework for Optimized Integrated Lunar Infrastructure. So we do got some stuff as far as what's going on recently, but let's hear from this guy about it, shall we? Since he was so proud of this thing that he wanted to create.
When it comes to defending America, it is not enough to merely have an American presence in space. We must have American dominance in space. Very importantly, I'm hereby directing the Department of Defense and Pentagon to immediately begin the process necessary to establish a Space Force as the sixth branch of the armed forces. That's a big statement. We are going to have the Air Force, and we are going to have the Space Force.
The Space Force to compete against China. Sorry, had to. But yeah, we've got plenty here that's pointing that this thing has not stopped. It's actually gained speed and gained momentum as we go barreling towards this project, Bluebeam. Now, what's fascinating is those Toronto protocols were from the 666 meeting back in 1967. But even the idea of an alien threat or an alien invasion to unite the world goes back to at least 1966, as we see in the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Page 522, The Creature from Jekyll Island, an invasion by aliens from outer space was given serious consideration. The report said that the experiments along those lines already may have been tried. Public reaction, however, was not sufficiently predictable because the threat was not, quote unquote, credible. Here's what the report had to say. Credibility, in fact, lies at the heart of the problem of developing a political substitute for war. This is where the space race proposals, in many ways so well suited and economic substitutes for war fall short. The most ambitious and unrealistic space project cannot for itself generate a believable external menace. It has been wholly argued that such a menace would offer the last best hope of peace, which false peace, right? By uniting mankind against the danger of destruction by creatures or aliens from other planets or from outer space. Experiments would been proposed to test the credibility of an out-of-our-world invasion threat. It is possible that a few of the more difficult to explain flying saucer incidents Nazi research, as well as holograms of recent years, were in fact early experiments of this kind. If so, they could hardly have been judged encouraging. So it says the report was released in 1966 when the idea of an alien presence seemed far-fetched to the average person. In the ensuing years, however, that perception has changed. A growing segment of the population now believes that intelligent life forms may exist beyond our planet. That's what they were hoping for, destigmatizing it, and can be monitored by our civilization. Whether that belief is right or wrong is not the issue here. The point is that a dramatic encounter with aliens shown on network television, even if it were to be entirely fabricated by high-tech computer graphics or laser shows in the sky, could be used to stampede all nations into world government, supposedly to defend the Earth from the invasion. On the other hand, if the aliens were perceived to be having peaceful intent, an alternative scenario would be to form world government to represent a unified human species, speaking with a single voice in some kind of galactic federation. Little Ashtar going on there. Either scenario would be far credible today than in 1966. So, protocols were 1967. They were working on this stuff at least from 1966, but the study of how the populace would react goes even further back. Let's take a jaunt back to the 1938 radio play by Orson Welles called The War of the Worlds. The play was an adaptation of H.G. Wells' novel, which, if you watch the End Times New Age series, would know that H.G. Wells was a part of the Fabian Society. He was a futurist, as well as connected to the Cabal group. Wonder why he was writing things like this. And so if we take a look, back in the 1938s, it was exploding all over the place. Fake radio war stirs terror through the United States. Radio listeners in panic, taking war drama as fact. War skit on radio terrifies nation. Radio play terrifies the nation. You can find news articles and stuff and stories from people that were talking about, man, people were leaving cities. They packed up and were gone. People were panicking, causing things all over. So an alien invasion would absolutely cause fear, especially since that was just a radio play. Just imagine if you combined holograms, frequencies, financial collapse, DE weapons, as well as nuclear explosions on top of it. You think you could get the entire world on board for that? They managed to cause quite a ruckus in the United States for a radio thing. Just imagine if there's visuals as well as actual stuff exploding. So this is definitely something that they've been testing and trying for a very long time. They're just getting things set up to finally pull the trigger on it. Now, on top of this, we have a movement called the Raelism movement. Check that out. Yeah. This is the Raelism movement. Raelism, or Raelianism, is a UFO movement founded in 1974. They say Rael, however you want to pronounce it, the founder had an encounter with an Elohim scientist who created the human race. That's right. Had an encounter back in 74 about this. Let's take a look at the story that they present. Extraterrestrials created all life on Earth. Ancient writings and traditions worldwide tell us that the intelligent and powerful beings came to Earth in vehicles from the sky. This is straight out of Ashtar Command, Council of Nine, the Pleiadians. I mean, this is straight there. This is it. The words used to describe those events were what any pre-technological culture would use to describe contact with technologically advanced beings. Again, world's version of an alien. Ask somebody what it is, they'll give you multiple of these answers, and we're definitely seeing that. It says, now that we have entered the age of science ourselves, we can understand how life can be scientifically rather than mystically created by a highly advanced race. The message from the designers relate that the extraordinary message revealed to Maitreya Rael by by a human being from such as advanced extraterrestrial civilization. Those searching for evidence of extraterrestrial life need to look no further than humanity's most revered ancient text, the Elohim, as they were known in the original Hebrew Bible, or as the Enokai, Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu, and other religious texts, deliberately created all life on Earth through highly advanced science. Then they go on to answer questions. The Elohim of the Bible. Thousands of years ago, scientists from another planet came to Earth and created all forms of life, including humans, in their image and likeness. So they are twisting the word of God like no other here. Due to the highly advanced technology, they were mistaken for gods by our primitive ancestors and often referred to as Elohim, which in ancient Hebrew means those who came from the sky. Despite being a plural word, over time the word Elohim was mistranslated. That's right. We are the ones mistranslating the word into singular God as referenced in modern day Bibles. The fact is there is one true Elohim, and that is God, and we know him as the Godhead, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. There is one true Elohim, and if you look into the other Old Testament versions of the word Elohim, they're talking about God, or the other two versions are false gods, or appointed rulers and judges who will answer to God after they die. And so they are twisting this in all sorts of types of way. There is no other gods. It's either Elohim, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, or false God, or a human ruler who will answer to God, who is appointed by God. And so they're twisting that as much as they possibly can to do that, of course, to fit their fake religion. Then it goes on to say, the prophets. Through the ages, the Elohim maintained contact with many prophets, including Moses, Buddha, Jesus, and Muhammad, to name a few. Again, we're talking about, the ascended masters and what they believe with that. They were all chosen by the Elohim, their fake gods there, to guide humans through the ages with messages of love, harmony, and peace. There's the one world religion that they want to promote, such as Ashtar Command. Then they go on to talk about the apocalypse. In 1945, the first atomic bomb was dropped over Hiroshima. Our humanity entered a new era, the predicted age of apocalypse. The word apocalypse etymology means revelation. Mankind had now reached the crucial stage in which it would use science to enter the golden age or destroy itself. It was at this time that the Elohim decided it was time to send their last prophet, who would reveal our true origin, demystifying what the prophets of old could not. And then their whole goal is to build the extraterrestrial embassy. The Elohim, or our creators, have asked us to build an embassy where they will officially return to meet with our world leaders. So when do they determine that the Elohim is going to come down and meet with the leaders? 2025. They believe that on October 7th, 2025, the Elohim will return and meet with the prophet for the second time. Makes you wonder, especially since this movement was formed about the same time that they were juicing up Project Bluebeam, if they have plans, if they know the plans regarding what's going to happen with Project Bluebeam. It just makes you wonder. I ain't date setting. Don't even go there. I'm not even doing that. But it's just fascinating how they choose these dates. It's interesting. Makes you wonder if they're in on it. That's the question I have. I wonder if they're in on it. In a nutshell, Project Bluebeam is more than holograms, aliens, and an answer to explain away the rapture. Ultimately, it's the planned and designed card, the final card to turn on the Antichrist 3-pillar beast system. Through fear, a one-world government will be established. Through destruction, a one-world economy will be created. And the very foundation that it's built upon is a one world religion. Project Bluebeam is much bigger than I think people realize. Much, much bigger. Now, here's something to hinge on, something to think about, because a lot of people think, and I'm not saying they're wrong. First of all, I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just presenting something. This is the direction my mind thinks on this. I'm not planting my flag. It's just how my mind thinks on this. A lot of people think that when the rapture happens, the reactionary move from the cabal will be to hit Project Bluebeam. I think it's the other way around. Keep in mind, just as we talked about in the last one, God sits above time and everything has already happened for him. He knows exactly when they're going to pull the trigger on this. So who's to say that they don't pull the trigger first and then God does the rapture, causing mass confusion to even the elites on what just happened? You want to talk about an overall deception. That's going to confuse everybody, because keep in mind, the elites are planning to abduct people in order to make it appear that the rapture has happened. Well, what will they think when people actually do disappear and it wasn't them that did it? Something to think about on that. That's how I lean. Again, I'm not planting my flag because, again, we have no idea. We don't know. I know there's some people, this is how it's going to, we have no clue. We have no idea. We don't even know if this thing is going to work. It's the best answer we've got, but we don't even know if this is going to work. Maybe they've got something else going on that we don't know. But I just tend to lean in the other way, where I think they're going to pull the trigger. God knows exactly when he's going to do it. Then he's going to hit the rapture, and it's going to cause total confusion after that point. Things are going to go way off the rails at that point, because their plan has really been foiled at that point. So something to think about. Think about that. Again, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen. Just presenting it. Just giving you an idea. Something to think about. It's always fun to think about that stuff. But that is Project Bluebeam, guys. In a nutshell. There's a whole bunch more to it, but again, we don't have time to go over all that. I think this gives you an idea. It shows you just how truly involved, how in-depth, how it's more than just holograms that's going on with this thing. This is the final card. This is the trigger to that Antichrist beast system, if that's ultimately what they plan on doing. But with that, all of this, again, has already been written for us to know. And that is in the Word of God. How do we know this? Well, it's God's Word, and it's already happened for him. So he's telling us what will happen. And so all these things, we understand that this three-pillar beast system is coming. We understand the goal of what's going to happen. Now, again, we don't know exactly how it's going to happen. We have some ideas. It gives us, again, but we look at a lot of Revelation. Church is gone after chapter 4. We're gone. What happens after that isn't for us. So technically, we're just going to get a small piece of it while we're still here reading and studying and watching things unfold naturally. But it's not for us. It's for those who are going to be left behind. And I'm telling you what, you don't want to be left behind. We sit here and we go through all this stuff, and it's like, oh, well, that's kind of fascinating, Doesn't sound too bad. Dude, it's going to be hell on earth. It's going to be hell on earth. You don't want to be here for when that thing kicks on. You really don't. You want to be the ones going up. You want to be a part of that crowd.